Hi everyone, welcome back to another lightsaber review video. This here is the Dave Parkin Obi-Wan Kenobi A New Hope static prop, which I recently purchased from a member on one of the Facebook groups who had bought his when Dave initially did the run last year, and he no longer needed it. It was brand new, untouched. I was very pleased to finally get this because I missed out on the initial run. Well, I didn't miss out, obviously I knew about it, but at the time, unfortunately, I didn't have the funds. I was also a little bit undecided because I had the Roman props MK1. I couldn't decide if I wanted to sell the Roman props and buy this one or just hang on to the Roman props and weather it as best as I could. In the end, I decided to hold on to the Romans. And for those of you who've watched previous videos on my Roman props MK1, you might be able to see that I did a lot of work on it to try to achieve something similar to this look, but ultimately I wasn't 100% satisfied with the results, and I decided, you know what, if I do find a Dave Obi-Wan, I'm just going to sell my Romans and buy that, and that's what I did. So this is based on the Chronicles look. So that's not to say, first of all, I'd just like to get this out because people ask this all the time, which is better, Dave or Roman, or which is more accurate? And there really isn't. It's a matter of personal preference. I prefer the Chronicles look. Dave's is already weathered, so he's done all the hard work. So Dave's is already set up to look like the Chronicles look. Romans is a fantastic Obi-Wan Kenobi, very accurate, really great quality, but you'd have to do all the weathering yourself. And you know, in the future, I may buy another Roman props MK1, but I'd leave it as it is. I wouldn't do too much weathering. I might kind of convert it into more kind of a screen accurate, like a Tunisia or or the Death Star version. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. It's not that this is better than the other one or the other way around. It's just, for the time being, I wanted to go with the Chronicles one. So let's just look at all the little subtle details. So starting from the top in the emitter portion, you can see how much detail there is here with all the little dents and damage that Dave did. I mean, Dave did an enormous amount of research on this prop, and he's actually sent me these because I previously bought just this clamp from him, and he'd included this in the purchase. This is a photo from the Chronicles book of the original prop. It really exists in just these two, just from these two angles, but it was black and white, and he's digitally kind of colorized them and used this to reference the build of his prop. So I'll just go over it later. I'll kind of compare part by part. So just looking at, first of all, let's look at the emitter or the balance pipe. You can see quite a lot of heavy weathering on the original prop. It's very similar to what Dave has done with his replica. Got a really beautiful shade. This was something that I had a lot of trouble with on the Romans. I couldn't make these dents look exactly like that. And, you know, adding these nicks and scratches wasn't too much of a problem, but just achieving this kind of shade was tricky. This little kind of white scratch is intentional, and it lines up perfectly with the transistors as it should be. So yeah, this was definitely a selling point for me, was the emitter. The little damage that you see here done by hand I had done something similar on my Romans with the Dremel, but again, it didn't turn out as nice as this. Okay, moving on to the neck section. So almost fairly clean brass here, but the wind vane has a fair bit of weathering to the brass and all these dents in it. And it's covered with brown tape, which is unconfirmed, but is something that I've spoken to Dave about this, and he's quite convinced that there's something on top of the brass neck in the Chronicles to hide the stamping. And this appears to be the case. We can almost see something over here. But he's done a fantastic job in replicating the finer details of this interesting prop. So yeah, that's a wind vane. And the rest of the neck here, again, a beautiful shade of brass. I'll try to zoom into it a little bit more. And then moving down to the grenade section. This is something that I actually had pretty good results with on the MK1. I had done quite a bit of natural rusting. It did give me an effect very similar to this. Oh, this is very beautiful. Lots of little damage on the cubes of the grenade. Really gives it that aged look that you'd want to go for in a prop like this. Let's just look at the reference photos for comparison. Yeah, of course this is colorized, so we don't know 100% what it looked like in real life, but I can imagine it was quite rusty. But we can clearly see so much of the marks and chips and things on the actual cubes. This being obviously made of real world parts. This would have been a World War II Hales grenade. So yeah, it would have been pretty beat up. Okay, next the clamp. This is something that I try as I might, I just could not get this effect. And in the end, I just kind of gave up and bought a clamp from Dave to put on my Romans MK1. Just look at all the details on this. First of all, he's made it so it looks like a Fulmer clamp with that kind of rounded lever rivet, which is a nice touch. There are the two brass screws, one over here, one over here. There are two cotter pins, one over here and one on this side. And then we've obviously got all the chrome tape on both sides, this side and also on this side. And we can see loads of chips and rust all over the clamp, the largest area being this around the screw. And the transistors are also accurate, so the ME on the top one is facing upwards, the ME on the bottom one is facing almost downwards, and bottom transistor has a washer, top transistor is missing the washer underneath. The rest of the stamping is unconfirmed. Dave has gone with MA15 for the top one and MA34 for the bottom one. There's a long thread on the RPF about all his research, but these are not 100% confirmed. Again, these little subtle details I couldn't achieve on the Romans MK1. I just couldn't get this hole to, just because of the way the clamp sits on the spacer underneath, the pin would kind of go that way, or it would just be loose. I just had like various technical issues with this, trying to get the screw First of all, finding the right screw was tough, and also getting it to mount in a way that it was almost flush. That was very tricky, for me at least. Mind you, this one is not as flush, and that's because it's pressure fitted. But I do have spares of these that Dave sent me. If one should ever fall out, it's an easy replacement. Moving on, the bubble strip. This is from Wanawanga. Nice little accurate detail is that the space above the top bubble is shorter than the space under the lower bubble. I'll show you that in the reference photo. You can just see that the space here is a little bit shorter than the space down there. But also just look at all the details on the clamp. You can see a heavily rusted lever, a rounded rusty pin, giving it away as a former, the brass screw over there, the border of the the line where the chrome tape ends, and you can clearly see the G. Let's compare that. Exactly as Dave has done. And from the other angle, you can see the LE. I'm not sure if you can see the X. I think the X is covered with the tape. And then you've got the transistors. And you can see the ME faces up here and ME faces down here. And the washer. Again, let's compare that with the other side. So from that kind of viewpoint, yeah, you can see the LE, but the X is covered. Okay, and now we move on down to the booster. Again, this is fantastic. This turned out much better than my Romans booster. I love these little dents that he's done. And the rust in between also looks gorgeous. One of these fins has a big dent on it, almost like it's broken off. And that appears to be accurate. Let's have a look in comparison. Where was it? Let's see, let's find that broke. So it's the one that's nearest to the lever. So from there, yeah, you can see there, it's kind of chipped off. And you can see how much damage there is on the tips of the fins of this booster. And finally, the hand wheel or the pommel. Again, Dave has done a little bit of weathering in between the pommel cubes. Little detail here is I noticed there's a little stamping, which I did not have on my Romans. And some more weathering here on the bottom. And also this distinctive scratch mark over here, which is definitely present on the real prop. And a standard D-ring, which I believe might be from Wanawanga. So there's a couple of small modifications I will make to this, or not modifications, but just kind of upgrades. One is I do have a spare vintage bubble strip from an Exactra calculator, which I will be replacing. So it's going to look identical, really. I'm not sure if it's going to be cut exactly the same way, but it's vintage, and this is a Wanawanga replica. So I'll be using my vintage bubble strip instead of this. Number 2 is the D-ring. I have a vintage D-ring that has the accurate kind of acorn shape that we see in the Luke V2, which I believe is the same one that they used on the Obi-Wan. It's hard to tell. I mean, we don't really have good pictures of the D-ring. It's hard to say, but it looks like it's the little acorn one to me, like the V2 Luke. This one just doesn't look, it looks a little bit too wide. So I'll be replacing that. And finally, the pommel cap. We're not sure if the pommel cap is there, if this blue ring is there. In the original prop that was used in the Tunisia scenes, at least, I think the pommel cap is removed altogether. This whole end plate is not there on film, at least in the Tunisia scenes. Death Star, I'm not sure. Chronicles, we don't know again because it's a side view. We only have these 2 pictures to go by. But Dave did render it, and he thinks it's probably not there. So I think I will be removing it as well. It is really hard to say, but you kind of see there's a step there that I'm not really seeing on the original. So I think I'll be removing that. So if I were to try to line it up, I'm seeing an extra step on this that I'm not clearly seeing in this photo. In terms of alignment, you would want this white scratch mark to line up roughly with this rust patch when you're looking from top to bottom. You want the pin, or if you hold it that way, the pin of the grenade to line up with the transistors. And that, I believe, is accurate. Yeah, I see it right here. You can see the pin. And it lines up with the transistors. What else? You want to, when you orient it, so if you're looking at that view with the bubble strip facing up like that, and you're reading the letters G and R, so something like that. That's that same view. You want the D-ring to be down here. And the diagonal scratch on the pommel cubes, that's from the other view. That should line up again, more or less, with the transistors. And that's all there is to it. So once again, Dave Parkin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 4, A New Hope, replica in the style of the Chronicles. Very highly accurate, machine to excellent standards. He's used he sourced the metal and things like that he used. All the materials were based on what he found from his research. So it's very close to what the original, and it feels great in the hand. It's heavy. It feels like almost like a real one. I think this is the next best thing to owning an actual real parts Obi-Wan. A lot of my friends do build parts, like real found parts Obi-Wan. They are very, very expensive. It's not anything that I'm going to be doing, I don't think, in my life. Some of these parts, the vintage parts of just the balanced part, if you're lucky enough to find one, and you'll have to machine it from male to female or something, it's like $3,000-4,000 just for this, if you're lucky enough to find one in good shape. You know, I mean, boosters go for 5,000-6,000. So you're looking at the hilt altogether. If you could find all the parts, which could take you years, it could go up to $15,000-$20,000 easily, and that's not anything that I will ever be doing myself. So I'm more than happy with this. It looks almost just as good, as near as we can get with a replica, and yeah, very nice to add in the display. As I said, I may in the future buy a Roman Props MK1, just brand new one, just to make it, because it'll have a black grenade. It won't have any of these chips and scratch marks and weathering. It just kind of looks slightly different to it. I'll maybe set it up to look like the either Tunisia version or the Death Star version, whichever, just so then I have like two of them. But that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.